Stop
Sorry about that, Karen. There we go.
Okay. Again, this is Karen Kaemmerling from Colorado Mountain College. I am the Assistant Dean of Instruction for Online Learning. And at Colorado Mountain College, that means really that I'm in a two-man department running the online learning for the college. And so I wanted to share a little bit about what we've been doing regarding course quality at Colorado Mountain College and how we have been upping the game to a certain extent. And it sounds like this is a pretty popular topic going on at a lot of institutions. And so I'm happy to share the process that we've been using at the school. I should also provide a little disclaimer. I am not the biggest Matrix fan you've ever seen. However, when we came up with the name of our quality program, it was named the Matrix, and so it makes me feel like this movie matches a little bit of what we have been doing at CMC. And the other disclaimer, just real quick, is that my daughter's school went into lockdown 30 minutes ago, and so I do have my phone on just in case she calls with an emergency, and I apologize for that. I know it's totally unprofessional, but the world has changed. So our old quality assurance program at CMC really mirrored what you might have heard from CCC Online in the past years. I am a former employee of CCC Online and their quality programs at that institution. And so what we did when I moved to Colorado Mountain College is we did a lot of exploring with the different quality initiatives back in 2013 and 2014. But at that time, we had no instructional designers. We had no shared courses or templates. And so what we did is we built a team of faculty and staff members that designed a best practices packet. In 2014, it was released to our faculty, and it was truly based off of Quality Matters, but also some other frameworks from research across the country and the world at that time. But it also meant that at that time, as the only Assistant Dean of Instruction for Online Learning, I was observing every course 2 times a term for course readiness before the classes launched and midway through the semester for course engagement. And this was incredibly time intensive. There were as many as 180, 200 courses that I was deep diving into twice a semester. Usually took somewhere between 60 and 80 hours to complete these checks and observations. And so it was fairly intense at that time to complete it. And it also didn't really elicit a dialogue. And so that's why I felt like this picture really exemplified how it felt as I was peeking in, taking a look, but it really wasn't evolving into significant conversation at that time with faculty. So to give you an idea of the things that I reviewed in those courses at the time was whether it was published, whether it had a welcoming homepage, whether it had welcome announcements, and whether they were very frequent. And that meant bean counting in Canvas at the time, counting to see how many announcements a faculty member posted, as well as looking at introduction discussions, counting how many discussions were in every course, whether faculty were participating in those discussions and how frequent, whether they had updated due dates and a current syllabi in their course, frequency of their grading, what kind of feedback they were providing, whether they used rubrics, course organization items such as whether it was in modules and whether that organization made a great deal of sense, any navigation items, whether it was any kind of consistency, and then overall instructor engagement in the course. And it really felt like you were splitting yourself into many different directions, trying to look at all those courses. And really, it was felt superficial in some ways. While we really did try to look at engagement and the connections between students and faculty, it never really got into anything very substantial because we were just too busy, too overworked. Oops. And so when I attended the HLC conference in 2020, which was during the height of the pandemic, there were a lot of presentations at that time about institutions who had not formally been heavily online, going online, and how they were evaluating their quality in this new space. There really wasn't all that new, but there were new people looking at what we were doing and how we were doing it in the online and learning environment. And so after attending a presentation there, we began looking at what were our standards and whether they were significant enough to really evaluate a quality online course. We were a Quality Matters institution at the time, but we weren't utilizing the tools with Quality Matters like we could. And so also at this time, a new assistant dean of instruction was hired to help split the course management and support that I was providing. And so suddenly, I wouldn't say I had a time on my hands, but we had a little different perspective with a new person coming in, but also maybe a new opportunity to look at the courses a little differently. And so what we did is we started by reviewing design standards across multiple programs, and I've just kind of listed a few here. We examined all of those, and our goal was to merge them, much like CCC Online or CCCS described this morning, of merging programs together to be very CMC specific and very supportive of our faculty, and to take it to the next level beyond what I was doing, but also even potentially what Quality Matters had established. So we used Quality Matters as our starting place, and we began looking for similarities and differences within all the different quality initiatives across the country and the world. And we spent a lot more focus while we were looking at these on ADA and DEI elements within these standards, particularly because at the same time we were designated as an HSI or Hispanic serving institution. And so we really wanted to bring all of these elements together. And we looked at Universal Design for Learning, UDL. We started looking at HIPS practices, high impact practices that were coming out and being I attended a Pikes Peak workshop on high impact practices and courses. And so we really just looked at all of these different items. And then also during this time, because of 2020, we knew our students were experiencing trauma in a way that maybe they never had before, financial and personal trauma. And so we began looking at trauma-informed instruction as well as transparency in instruction for students, and making sure that we embedded all of that into what we wanted to include in a high quality course. So how did one or two people do this? Well, we didn't do it by ourselves. We were really looking at, initially, we had an online council that was a group of faculty, other assistant deans of instruction at the college, instructional designers that had been hired right at the beginning of the pandemic. And we had this group of people, and we began with them. But then because of the pandemic, that group was disbanded quite quickly, and they weren't able to continue the work with us. We did have instructional designers for about a year at Colorado Mountain College, and those individuals also helped do the research with us and help inform what we wanted in our quality design standards. But then also, we now had the two ADIs, not just myself. And so Sean Strode and I spent a lot of time really on this project, and it became our baby because everyone was so busy. So how did we launch this? We spent a lot of time building it, and I'll share more details about it in a little bit. But CMC, we really need buy-in from a lot of different stakeholders in order to launch any kind of program that would evaluate courses and course delivery in the online environment. And so one of the challenges that we had when we came up with our matrix is that people kept thinking of it as a rubric, and people want their A's, and we had 3 columns, and we had the basic, the intermediate, and advanced column. And people thought that they, needed to have everything in the advanced. And so we quickly had to change the wording and the framework of how people were viewing what we were sharing with them, how they perceived it as more of a matrix, that it wasn't about being perfect and hitting every item in every column, and that the columns weren't designed that way. And so I'll share a little bit more about that as well in a minute. But when we were building this matrix, we really wanted it to be more comprehensive and include a lot more content in what we expected in online courses regarding ADA. We wanted to really help evolve what kind of content faculty were selecting, but we also wanted the rubric to be a little more specific in areas that maybe provided a little too much wiggle room in the past for faculty. We really wanted the matrix to drive more conversation with faculty and elicit teamwork between the assistant deans of instruction and faculty, more than I've checked your course and you're missing these 3 things. And so we really thought about how to change the dialogue around what we were doing when we looked at courses to be more supportive and inclusive, rather than me checking and someone feeling like I was headhunting for an error.
Karen?
Yes.
Karen? Sorry to interrupt. There's not a very strong lag, but there is a small minor lag in your audio. And I think if you were to turn your camera off, it might help.
Awesome.
Okay.
Okay, is that better?
Yes.
Wonderful. Okay, additionally, we built the matrix again with the 3 columns. Our basic column has all those elements that I mentioned earlier for quality online courses that we used prior and that we built in 2014. And then we added a few more specifics, particularly around ADA expectations in the online courses. And we ultimately ended up with 30 items in the basic column that we believe every online course should have checked off all the time. And so these 30 elements, I'll share a little bit more in a bit, but and that's kind of how we conveyed it to faculty, is that we really want 30 out of 30 in the basic column. And then we have what we consider intermediate or advanced skills. So an online instructor who's been teaching a while, 20 years or more at this point, may be ready to take their courses to the next level. And we wanted to set expectations that a course that has the basic stuff is great and a good starting place for a brand new instructor, but that the courses can go to the next level. And again, now we have no instructional designers to support faculty. So we wanted to provide incentives, but also some guidance on what they might look for in building their online courses to the next level. We also kind of changed how we are looking at the online courses. Instead of checking them twice a term, every term, what we decided with the matrix is that if someone had achieved 30 out of 30 in the fall semester, we didn't necessarily need to check them again in the spring and in the summer and in every single shell they teach in. And so what we set up is a system where they self-evaluate and we evaluate their course off those 30 out of 30 items. And then we would check the courses once a year rather than over and over and over every semester. We really wanted to do that so that we could help focus on faculty who needed greater support in their courses and were struggling to maybe achieve the basic things like posting announcements on a regular basis and those kinds of things, provide more coaching to them and support for them. rather than dividing ourselves equally amongst every single faculty. And so in order to implement this, we did meet with the deans and the leadership to convey our plan, and our plan included a training process as well as a delivery process. And so we met with the deans and the leadership because we wanted to ask for permission to require every online instructor to take the asynchronous teaching course that we developed. And this was really a new concept at CMC. While new instructors were required to take some trainings, existing instructors really are not required to. And we felt like it was really important, especially during the post-COVID first year. We saw a lot of COVID creep where people were teaching online for the first time, and they took some quick down and dirty training to get online, and then believed that they were online instructors with a lot of experience. And while they did have some experience, they didn't quite have the same experience that our seasoned professionals for 20 years of teaching online had. We also needed to kind of reset the vocabulary and the expectations at Colorado Mountain College, again, because of COVID, because of so many people were in such a hurry to get things online. Things maybe slipped past quality standards that shouldn't have in that time. And so we really wanted everyone to take this training, and whether they're full-time, adjunct, 20 years experience, no experience. And so we did deliver a training called Asynchronous Teaching to the entire online instructor population, well over 100 instructors. It was a self-paced training with faculty input, in that we also had a pilot group for this training, and we asked that group of about 25 faculty members who were both part-time and full-time. When they were done with the training, they rated it, provide us just feedback. And then we also had some faculty build some quick videos, 5 minutes or less, on certain skills that they did really well, so that we could embed that into the training. So we really wanted the faculty voice in it, not only in the content, but also in sharing some tips and tricks with their peers. In that training, we included a one-page checklist that is essentially the basic column on one page, all 30 items, and the matrix. We met with each faculty as they completed the training over the phone to discuss and review the matrix. And then we asked those faculty during that phone call if they had any concerns about items that were in the basic column, things they felt like didn't fit their course instruction pedagogy, or any kind of things that they felt like were too restrictive, or had too much expectations, such as grading within 72 hours, those kinds of things. And to be honest, we had zero people believe that the column had anything in it that was unfair or an unreasonable expectation. And then after that phone call, the faculty member and the ADI, the Assistant Dean of Instruction, did a deep dive in the course. And that's where we took the 30 items and we looked at the course and identified what faculty had and didn't have out of the 30. So for instance, one of our items was the course navigation should have less than 10 items in the left-hand navigation. Again, keeping in mind that we don't have any templates or anything required of our faculty, and a certain order. And so we provided this guidance in the training. We took a look, and we just kind of checked through every course as we went with faculty, and then reported back to that faculty member, here are the things that I see that might not line up with the existing matrix. And I have to tell you, faculty were incredibly happy to receive this little bit of feedback. They had the matrix, they knew exactly what we were expecting. So nothing was necessarily a surprise, but it felt very collaborative. And out of the 30 items, most faculty had 25 out of 30. And it was something simple like navigation items had not been turned off, that we might expect to see turned off in a more experienced instructor's course, or that had crept in there that they didn't even realize they could turn off. So some very simple things. And then the other goal with this entire project is that we don't want it to become a stagnant document that we're still using exactly as it sits today, 5 years from now. We want to do an annual review of the matrix and the training, and just to make sure that it's constantly up to date and bringing in some new trends and those kinds of things, so that the faculty continue to value it as something that will help them continue to be more cutting edge in their courses. This is proving to be a little bit of a challenge because the time does get away from us, but I do believe that every semester we're talking about little tweaks that we can make to make it clearer or take it to the next level. So kind of this picture really made me chuckle when I saw it, because there are times where I truly feel like I'm sitting in my desk on the floor in my little space, just hoping for the best and trying to get through the day, and not being able to take another project, another thing. But with this, we had some really great results. We had 100% of our faculty complete this training in 1 year. And that includes the people who were in the pilot. We also compensated all adjuncts for taking this training during that first year. That's not something we will continue or can continue, because at this point it would all be new instructors coming online, and there's a different program for that. But that was an incentive to encourage them to take the training that ultimately took about 2 hours, 2 to 4 for an individual to get through, depending on how attentive they were to the content. And based on our phone calls and interactions, we have not had one dissatisfied customer when they've taken the training. Everyone, including those who've been teaching for 20 years, felt like there were some great reminders and good tips and tricks in there that they had kind of let slip as their lives got busier as well. What we really discovered is that our process took a lot of time, over an hour to deep dive into a course, then over an hour phone call with faculty, and it just and then the follow-up pieces of, well, you're kind of missing this element or that element, really got away from us, and the college had more and more things that they wanted us to explore and get into. And so that has really become quite the challenge on how to continue to use this tool as we originally intended, to drive conversations with faculty. The other piece that we've kind of been diving into a little bit more is that while we did include a lot of ADA elements in our matrix, the expectations nationally seem to have skyrocketed a little bit from where we were when we wrote this project. And so even at Colorado Mountain College, we're now using a tool called Ally more effectively. We had it before, but we are now using it to look at courses and really identify in each individual courses areas that need to be improved. And so we really are diving into some other more specific projects that are supported by the matrix, but aren't necessarily as broad and as effective as we could be. And so we have projects like the ADA that we're really working on. And that really brings us to, is this a sustainable process where we are trying to use the matrix at least once a year with faculty and help, and our goal was really to help elevate the courses to our intermediate and advanced columns. And I can't say at the moment that either assistant dean of instruction or I really feel like we can support it long term at the pace that we're talking about in our environment. And so, you know, the college may do some restructuring on some of things, but this has really become something we're passionate about, because we really felt like we were finally making a great deal of stride in the delivery of and quality at of our courses, but it's not necessarily a sustainable process. So what does the matrix look like? And I think based on all the presentations I've been today, these conversations are happening everywhere. And so I think we're all kind of in the same place, is how do we look at our courses more holistically? And so we broke ours down into 4 elements. Our first section is course design and navigation, then course content, assessment, and instructor and student engagement. And then we have elements in those. But again, thinking about those 4 buckets, we have those 30 items are spread throughout the buckets for the basic column. So to give you another visual of what that might look like, this is our course design checklist for the 30 items that are required in the basic column. And when we designed this training in the course, we color coded the checklist to align with the matrix. And so when they finish their training, they walk away with this checklist they can print out, but also the matrix and everything aligns with the basic column. And so you can kind of get an idea as you look at these. I'm not going to read them to you, but these are the kind of the basic things that we have talked about in online instruction for many, many years. And I think we've tried to put it in a digestible form for faculty who really were going from 8 items being reviewed heavily to a broader set, and we didn't want it to become overwhelming or unmanageable for faculty. And so our other columns, you can kind of see how the matrix is laid out here. We have the intermediate column and the advanced column. And what we provided in the training is that we really didn't expect faculty to achieve everything in the intermediate or advanced columns, but we really wanted these areas to be a place where disciplines might identify things that are really important to the success of their online course, or even individual faculty might identify these things really apply to my course, but as a math faculty, something else doesn't apply. Did someone have something they needed to say?
I think that might be your Discord that's going off, Karen.
I don't know. Then we also really, when we talked with faculty and we looked at the matrix, we really explained that these were goal setting opportunities for their courses. And so when they looked at the intermediate and advanced columns, we didn't want them to be distracted or overwhelmed by them, but to think about, oh, that really speaks to me as an individual or a faculty member. Ultimately, the goal of the other assistant dean of instruction and myself was that we wanted to elevate our courses. So this year, if everyone had 30 out of 30 in the basic, that maybe they would be able to, we would be able to say, now we would really like you to be intermediate level if you've been teaching here for more than a year or something like that. But again, we'd really might just not have the support system in place to pull that off. And so we really wanted to elevate the courses with more equity and inclusion, to be more student-centered. And we also provided items in the columns that also might require more effort from a faculty member. And so an example of that is in a basic column, things graded within 72 hours, in an intermediate column, things graded within 48 hours or something like that, to indicate that the faculty member is being more and more prompt and engaged with their online course. But we really wanted to provide some space too for different disciplines to select what was most important to them. So here's kind of an example with the idea of some DEI elements within the matrix. And I just kind of shared them with the different columns. In the basic column, it's really choosing your language carefully with your assignments and those kinds of things. But then by the intermediate column, allowing the students to have the freedom to be more exploratory of their own backgrounds. And then in the advanced column, to really put in some systemic assignments and things to push students into thinking differently about marginalized groups and that kind of thing. And so it kind of just shows the different levels of expectations that we're encouraging our faculty to think about. And so you might have a faculty have all three of those different levels within their course, and another would be more in the basic level. So what are our next steps? Well, one, we really wanted the instructors to find this tool useful. And now that everyone has taken that asynchronous training, while many faculty said, oh, I should take this once a year, that's probably not a fair expectation. But now that everyone has taken it, identifying areas that are weak in it, or that we could spend more time providing resources and support, such as the ADA, it was our first step. And then also what we've discovered is some faculty, full-time and part-time, want to use the system that we've created for the matrix as part of their evaluation for promotion to another level. And so we've kind of had to look at that basic column and really rethink if this is for promotion, is the evaluation fulfilling enough for some sort of promotion piece? And yet we've kind of adopted a little bit of that. And then finally, we really need annual revision. As soon as we were done with creating the matrix, I mean, literally, we hit the send button and we were like, next time I think we should include this or that. And so we really need to spend some time on that as well in our deep dive. And so I just want to open it up to questions. I put this little last quote here that we're not really zeros and ones when it comes to instruction. And while we live in this digital environment, I think all of us now are trying to feel a way to customize how we look at course quality so that it's open and inclusive, not for our faculty as well as our students.
Karen, I'm not sure if you can see the chat now. There's one question about whether or not they can get a copy of your matrix.
Yeah, I'd be happy to share that. Can you tell me whether it was the easiest to give it to you and you could post it with my video or something like that? I just was thinking of a way that it would just be a one-stop shop type thing.
Yeah, so the video I think will be, I don't know, I think it usually takes a week or two before all the videos get posted, but if you have access to Discord, Karen, you can pop it into the presenter resources channel of Discord, which everyone at the conference should also have access to, and that's one way to share it. Another way would be if someone wanted to give you their direct email or email you directly to ask for it.
Sure. So I will put it in the Discord, but I also encourage you to send me an email if you would like a copy of it as well, because I just think that I'm not exactly sure how it'll load because it's in a certain format, but that copy will include a lot of explanation and content as well. So a lot of repeat of what I just shared. But yes, I will post that in Discord and I'm happy to send it to anyone who wants to email me.
All right, I just put your email in the chat, and for the person who asked for the link to Discord, I will go grab it. It'll just take me a couple minutes.
Any other questions or input?
I will actually stop the recording too, so that if people have questions, they feel more comfortable asking verbally.